What's up, my friend? Abby here, and welcome back to Writer's Life Wednesdays. Today we are talking about character voice. Last week we dove into the topic of writing in deep point of view, and I asked you guys if you wanted to see a video about character voice, and so many of you were like, yes please. So here we are. So today I'm gonna show you 7 techniques that you can use to totally rock your character voice. And it's especially important to rock your character voice when you have more than one point of view that you're writing from. I mean, sure, you'll have the chapter headings to tell the reader whose point of view they're reading, but you don't want that to be the only thing that tells the reader that they're in another character's head. You want it to be obvious because of the character's voice. So that's what we're gonna be talking about today, and after I give out the 7 character voice techniques, I'm going to answer some frequently asked questions on character voice. It's gonna be good. Let's go. Before we begin, I just want to put this out there. Character voice is hard because basically what you're trying to do is write something and put your own unique and personal touch on it, but also at the same time make it sound like you didn't write it. Weird. Difficult, but not impossible. So let's jump into the 7 techniques that I personally use to make my character voice strong, unique, and recognizable without sacrificing the quality of the writing. Number 1, learn your character's personality type. You've heard me talk about MBTI types a lot. Not saying that MBTI is like the be-all, end-all of somebody's personality. Absolutely not, but it's a good place to start, especially for your characters. If you know your character's MBTI type, it is so easy to just learn everything you can about that MBTI type, how they think and act, how they respond in certain social situations, what their greatest strengths and weaknesses are. How I usually choose my character's MBTI types is by getting a general idea of what role they're gonna be playing in the story. Usually when I first get a story idea, I immediately know what characters are gonna be broody and serious, what characters are gonna be fun and sarcastic, what characters are gonna be maybe energetic and silly, comic relief. That's the first step for me, figuring out the general personality and then nailing down an MBTI type for each character. A lot of times I use this handy little graph that I found somewhere on the internet, and also this list of the MBTI types summed up in a few words, and I'll link those images in the description box below if you want to check them out. Number 2, make your characters polar opposites. This one is kind of a hack, but it is great, especially if you are new to writing character voice. In fact, if you've never really tried making your characters have super unique voices, then I really recommend doing this even just for practice. Character voice is one of those things that it clicks for you at some point and you're like, okay, wow, yep, I get it, and then you never struggle with it again. That's how it happened for me, and what made it click for me was writing fan fiction. Some of you already know that in years gone by, I used to write tons of Nancy Drew Hardy Boys crossover fan fiction. I know I have at least one fellow member of the Clue crew out there. Anyways, I shipped Jancy hardcore, so of course I would always be alternating between Nancy and Joe's point of view. It took me a while to get the hang of it, but at some point it just clicked for me, and it was because these 2 characters are total opposites in personality. Same sort of thing with my debut novel, 100 Days of Sunlight. My 2 protagonists, Tessa and Weston, are very different from each other. Tessa is reserved, quiet, serious, sensitive, sometimes very sarcastic. Weston, on the other hand, is the energetic, spontaneous, unfiltered, hilarious, adorable life of the party. Opposites attract, and they definitely make your job easier as a writer because their voices are already so unique. But I get it, you might not want to make your characters total polar opposites. If that's the case, just do the other things. But I do recommend practicing with this polar opposite voice thing, even if it's just for fan fiction. Number 3, assign certain phrases to each character. This is one that I use all the time, because it just adds that authentic touch in a very subtle way. You know how certain people will say a phrase that you basically only ever hear them say, you maybe don't hear a lot of other people say it? I like to assign certain words and phrases to certain characters and not let other characters use that particular phrase or word. Like maybe one character says, "Oh my gosh," whenever they're surprised, and then another character always says, "No way," whenever they're surprised. Or even something as small as saying, "Look, all I'm saying is," versus, "Listen, all I'm saying is." If your characters all use the same phrases, expressions, and expletives, they'll start to sound like they're just carbon copies of each other. Not good. So I recommend making a little phrase list or guide, field manual thing for each character and adding it to their character profile so that you can stay consistent with those phrases and give each character a little unique linguistic touch of their own. Number 4, learn their form of manipulation. In my character profile template, I call this the character's weapon of choice, but I really should change that to the character's method of manipulation, because that's really what it is. If you're writing some kind of fantasy or sci-fi adventure novel, then you might want your character to have like a go-to physical weapon. But the other day I got a message from a writer asking, what are some good examples of a non-literal weapon? And as I was thinking about the answer, I was like, really, it's more like a method of manipulation. You can find all kinds of ideas online if you just Google, "How do people manipulate you?" Some of the most common ones are deception, physical intimidation, yelling, condescending comments, passive aggression, guilt trips, silent treatment, being a martyr, overly complimentary, frame control, exploiting other people's weaknesses, and the list just goes on and on. Even if you don't consider your character a manipulative person, every single person on the earth uses some form of manipulation to get what they want when things are not going the way they want. Yes, even me. Guess what mine is? Passive aggression. Number 5, use metaphors that the character would actually use, given their life experiences, the place they live, their job, hobby, etc. Of course, some metaphors and similes and maxims are not specific to anything, like careful what you wish for, but I'm talking more about like analogies, metaphors. So I tend to be pretty metaphorical with my writing, and I often have my characters comparing an emotion or a person or a thing with something else that they're familiar with. For example, when I was writing my last NaNoWriMo novel in 2018, my MC girl was gonna describe something using a metaphor of the ocean. And then I was like, wait a minute. She lives in post-apocalyptic South Dakota and has never seen the ocean. So it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense for her to have a ocean-themed metaphor. Needless to say, I made it like a desert-themed metaphor instead. And in another novel that I wrote that takes place in a coastal town, my MC constantly uses ocean metaphors because he lives right by the ocean and is kind of obsessed with it. Which kind of leads us to number 6. What your character does all day affects how they see the world. We touched on this in last week's video, but I wanted to talk about it again because it is so key to making your character voice shine. Basically, it's a well-known rule of psychology that what you train your brain to focus on, it will find. Research shows that people who have jobs that force them to focus on something very specific tend to see more of that specific thing in their daily lives, even when they're not at work. Which makes sense, right? I mean, the mind is like a muscle, so the more you work one part of your mind, the stronger it becomes. Don't go crazy with this though, because not everything in our daily lives reminds us of what we do for a job or hobby. So not everything in your character's daily life is gonna remind them of their hobby. And if you just keep like going overboard with all these metaphors relating to their job or hobby, it might end up sounding kind of corny. But if you sprinkle in these references, it can add such a good, authentic, unique touch to your character's voice. Example, yesterday I was editing another novel that I wrote in which my main character is a YouTuber, and he said something like, "My brain is still trying to download this information." And I was like, that's perfect. And finally, number 7, and possibly the most important thing, create your character's DFM lens. You're like, what the heck does DFM mean? Desire, fear, misbelief. We talk about this all the time, how your characters must have a desire, fear, and misbelief that makes them the conflicted person they are. And because this desire, fear, misbelief is so much a part of who they are as a person, they're going to see everything that happens through the lens of their desire, fear, and misbelief. For example, if you have a character who believes that money and fame equal happiness, and she's afraid that she'll be a failure if she doesn't achieve this, then you have a character who is going to see everything that happens through the lens of that misbelief. She's going to see rich and famous people and feel super jealous of them. She's going to look at her current life as if it's not good enough and she's not good enough. Or let's take another example. Let's say your character wants to fall in love and have a relationship with someone, but he's afraid of commitment. He's going to see other people in love and be jealous of them. He's going to see his own singleness as a curse and constantly look for ways to have a relationship with someone without really fully committing to them. That's essentially what the DFM lens is. So craft one for your character. I know this seems like it's more about character development rather than character voice, but one begets the other, and all these parts work together to create a really strong character with a really strong voice. Okay, so I just remembered one more tip. Let's just throw it in as a bonus. Use a different font for each character's point of view. This is actually a tip that I stole from my sister, and it works so well. In fact, I do not write a book without doing this. Every font kind of has its own personality, right? And so every character's point of view that I write gets their own unique font. It's such a small, nuanced difference, but it can make you feel totally different when you're writing. For a poetic character, I might use a fancy serif font. For a more logical and serious character, I might use like a clean sans serif font. For a comic relief character, I might use Comic Sans MS. No, just kidding. I don't use that font ever, of course, but I have heard things about like the psychology of that font, and it makes your brain totally not self-critical of it because it's like such a joke. I don't know, you'd have to read more about that. Google it. Those are my 7 best techniques on character voice, and I hope they will help you. Now, before we wrap things up, I want to answer those frequently asked questions I talked about on character voice. Some of you might be wondering, can a third-person omniscient narrator have a voice? We're gonna talk about choosing a point of view, first, second, third close, third omniscient, not next Wednesday, but the Wednesday after that, so stay tuned for that if you're interested in a video about that. But for now, I will say yes. Third-person omniscient can have a character voice because your character is the narrator. A perfect example of this is The Book Thief. Part of what makes this book so unique is that it's omnisciently narrated by death, which of course makes it super dark, but it also gives a very interesting reading experience and very creatively uses character voice. Next question. How do I make a guy's voice guyish and a girl's voice girly? Don't. Seriously, go by personality, not gender. There's this common myth that if you're a woman, you can't write a man's voice well, and if you're a man, you can't write a woman's voice well. This is not true. People are people regardless of gender, and we all have a different personality and way that we look at life. Remember the MBTI types that we talked about at the beginning of this video? Well, in each one of those groups, there are males and females. It's not just like all feeling types are women and all thinking types are men. If you seriously think that, go educate yourself. How do I make a little kid's voice sound like a little kid? Detach. You don't have to go overboard with stupidly simple language or bad sentence structure. In fact, I would advise against doing this because it can make your writing seem messy and muddy and just hard to read. But also don't write from where you are now because you're an adult now. Even if you're a teenager, your prefrontal cortex has developed way more than the average kid voice that you're trying to write. So expect to adjust the way you see things. And that's the thing, really, the way you see things. It's not so much the way you word things as it is the way you see things. Try to remember how you used to see things as a little kid. Read some good books that are written from the perspective of a little kid and just notice what makes it feel authentic to you. My personal recommendation, of course, would be To Kill a Mockingbird. This book is written from the perspective of a 6-year-old and it's so authentic. It's amazing. And last frequently asked question, how do I know if my character voice is good prose? Don't go by, is this good prose? Go by, is this enjoyable or immersive to read? That's what matters. When I write, I don't try to write good prose. I wouldn't even consider my writing good prose. My only goal is to make my writing emotional. I want to make my reader feel something when they read my stories. And oftentimes that comes from writing more simple, not more complicated. So write, have someone read what you've written and ask them. Don't ask them, was that good prose? Was that like impressive writing? Instead ask them, was that immersive? Did you feel like you were the character? That's what you're looking for. Okay, boom, that is all I have to say about character voice. Comment below and tell me, do you use any of these techniques or all of them? Do you have any other secret techniques and hacks and tricks that you use to rock your character voice? If so, please share it in the comments below so that we can all benefit from it. Smash that like button if you like this video, and be sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because I post writing videos every single Wednesday and I would love to have you here in the community. Also, be sure to hit that little bell icon next to the subscribe button so that you are the first to know when I drop a new video. Until next week, my friend, rock on.